The Smart Cookies podcast invites guests to share their smart, their motto for life. We then explore what we can learn from that about how to keep our families screen smart and safe. Join me, Jeanette Ballard, for Smart Cookies with wonderful guests, providing valuable insight into how to parent in the digital age. So today my guest is Emily Hughes. Emily, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do?
So I'm a conscious parenting coach, and in a nutshell what that means is I help parents to feel more confident, calm and capable, and ultimately more trusting of themselves. And the way I look at it is it's a bit like leadership coaching. I think parenting is the most important leadership role you'll ever be in your life, and I think it deserves respect. And if you were a leader in a workplace, you would probably get coaching and mentoring. And where I see my role is in giving that same attention to parenting that I deeply think it deserves.
Yeah, agreed. Would you? I assume you would extend that to carers as well, even grandparents, aunts, and uncles. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Anything where you're dealing with children, you're going to be dealing with emotional complexity, and I think that I think parenting and looking after kids is the most emotionally complex thing that we'll ever do, and I think that it really deserves support and intention and attention.
And I love that you called it leadership. It is a leadership role.
Yeah.
You are leading because you're guiding, aren't you?
Yeah.
How did you come to this?
Well, I used to be a media studies teacher. I taught media and film studies, and my job day to day was helping young people become media literate. And it's something that I'm really passionate about, just personally and, in my kind of past. And I suppose a few things led me to this. The first one was really parents' evening. Fascinated me when you got to see the parents.
You were in high school.
Yes, I was in secondary school. Okay. Yeah, and when you got to see the parents, and because every day I'd be seeing the young people, but when I saw the parents and how they interacted with their child, and just really fascinated me. And then I had my own kids, and I thought I would find it easy because I was a teacher, and actually. No, I found it incredibly difficult because I realised I had a lot of problems with control. And basically I found parenting very hard. I went to see a parenting coach.
Okay.
I was just raving about it. And then one of my friends said to me, well, you're looking to get out of teaching. Why don't you become a parent coach? And I was like, maybe I could. And then...
Okay, so I want to know, what is it that you found hard? And what did that parenting coach, how did they help you?
I think probably the biggest thing was I did not trust myself.
Ooh.
And really where I got to by the end of 12 weeks and where my clients get to by the end of the 12 weeks, that they report saying that they trust themselves more. And I think that this is the thing, because we parent in a really strange way in the West, and why I say we parent in a strange way is just how isolated and unsupported we are. And if you look at the history of humans, we have parented in tribe, in extended family, in tight-knit communities, and the way that we parent in the nuclear family is odd if you look at the history of humanity. And yet we've made it out like this is normal, and then we wonder why we're struggling. And I would say, well, of course it makes complete sense that we would be struggling, because we are parenting in non-optimal circumstances. And I think my role is to help parents to thrive within the non-optimal circumstances that they find themselves in.
Interesting. So I say to my friends, and I hear it said so often, it takes a village. And we kind of laugh and joke about it. But that is what it used to take. It used to take a community. And as you say, we've now shifted to this very nuclear, within your house and home model. Now, interestingly, you also said at the end of that, you help parents optimize their parenting, improve their parenting, feel more comfortable in their parenting within that model. So I guess there are two options there, aren't there? One is you encourage a village, you encourage a community approach, very hard to change how society is operating. Or, but it sounds like you're saying, okay, this is the situation at the moment. What can we do within it?
Yeah. So a big part of what I help parents to do is, well, there's lots of different things, but one of the things is to figure out their values.
Okay.
And I think this relates a lot to kind of screen time stuff as well.
Yeah.
And basically, if you know what your values are and you are crystal clear on what your values are, then parenting becomes a whole lot easier, because often what's happening when we feel triggered in our parenting, it's because things are not lining up with our values, and that feels really uncomfortable. And for people like myself who maybe have issues with control, like things to be orderly, in control and in line with their values, and then children come along, it can feel like a bit of a threat to those values. But making this really clear what's happening, and then helping you to live more in alignment with your values, so that the decisions you make, the boundaries you set, are not just sort of made up on the spot. They've been thought through so that they align with your values. And then probably, I think the most important part is really nervous system regulation. Because when we are, I could give parents all of the tools in the world, but if you are living in a baseline of fight or flight in your nervous system, then you're not going to be able to use those tools. So it's really about like lowering the nervous system baseline so that we can cope with more.
How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a big question. So really, what can be affecting the nervous system? One of the things is just not feeling inherently safe. And this sounds like an odd one, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about how unsupported we are as parents. So a lot of the parents that I see, they're living in a state of hypervigilance where things feel like a threat. And often that comes from really being unsupported in that first year of parenting. Just puts the nervous system at a heightened state of threat awareness. So that's one part of it, is helping to feel more safe. And I'm also trained in somatic therapy, somatic coaching, because I really and truly believe that just talking about things often doesn't fully address the whole picture, because the body is holding on to things. If the body is alert to threat, you can talk about it as much as you like, but if you don't tend to the body, and the three pillars that I bring in that really kind of help with the nervous system regulation are, first, soothing. I just feel like we are an under-soothed world. And you can see that just in global politics, but also in people's personal experience, that we could all do with so much more soothing. So that's the first bit.
Lovely.
It's just
What
bringing a
lovely
lot of
word
soothing
as well.
in.
Yeah.
Second bit is resourcing, because, as I've mentioned, the context in which we are parenting in, we're starting off at a resource deficit because we don't have these other people. So bringing in things, and they could be like imaginary things, or they could be real things that help to resource you, that help to build your capacity, that help to build your capability. And then the third bit is de-shaming, because shame, if you're bringing up kids in Britain, then you are living in quite a shame-based culture. It's not a supportive culture. It's a blame and shame-based culture, I believe, around raising kids. Where if your kid has a meltdown in the supermarket, the culture is not supportive and kind. The culture is of judgmental looks. And that is the context in which we are parenting in. So a big thing of my work is de-shaming. And to de-shame, really what we need to bring is safety, solidarity, acceptance, and really bringing all of this in. And shame is such a big driver for parental reactivity, but also people naturally don't want to talk about shame, because even the word shame can bring up spicy feelings in people's bodies, and people avoid talking about it. It's only when we really look at shame and start to tend to shame that we can lower that nervous system baseline.
In terms of working through that shame, is that a conversation, or is that, how does it work? Like, what would it look like?
Part of this can be to do with the beliefs that you're holding on to. And some shame-based beliefs might be, I'm not good enough. That's the core one. And the other one, a typical one, would be something like, I'm failing. Other ones might be like, I'm a bad parent, or I'm not a natural parent, is one that I hear a lot. And these are the narratives, the limiting beliefs. And these are driving the bus of your life unless you become aware of them, and unless you take action to tend to them, to soothe them. Nothing's going to shift if we are shoving that belief out. Often how we need to tend to limiting beliefs, like shame-based beliefs, is through kindness, through softness, but also bringing in more life-affirming, life-enhancing beliefs. And the big one that often comes up and really resonates for people is to stop focusing on good or bad, failing or succeeding, because those metrics are so sort of black and white, and parenting is so nuanced. So instead, what I like focusing on is capability, helping parents to feel capable, because then that's not a moral judgment. If you feel capable, something changes in your body. And often this is the thing, once parents have a few successes, have a few wins, then they start to feel more capable. Then they can start to practice feeling more capable. Then everything changes.
Let me, if you will, push back. I can imagine that I myself might have come to somebody like you to say, my child does this, my child does that, they don't do this, they don't do that. And then the conversation becomes about me, and I feel like what I have to do more, I have to do more changing and more developing and more growing. You know, what is the danger there, and how do you address it? That parents say, well, us again? We're at fault again? This is our fault?
Yeah. I totally relate to that, because it's like sometimes parents who are already overwhelmed can interpret this idea as, oh, it's going to be more overwhelmed. But actually, what I find is that actually in practice is really not true. Often the parent only has to change a little bit for the whole dynamic of the family to improve. And why the parent is best placed to change is that they have a more sophisticated brain than the child. So it makes sense to ask the question, well, who has the power to make the change here? Right. The person with the more sophisticated brain, or the person with the less sophisticated brain? And it's always going to be the person with the more sophisticated brain. And really, I look at, you know, any problem with the child is not really a problem with the child. It's a problem in how the dynamics of the family, how we relate to that child. And often when we just tweak how we relate to the child rises up and they meet that dynamic change. And things happen much more easily than parents think that it will do. And sometimes parents come to me and they are looking for, you know, everything is about the child. The child is the problem. And often those parents are looking for this like quick fix. What can I do to fix this child? But really, often those quick fix things are short-term gain for long-term pain. And really, stuff will only change in the family if the dynamic becomes more peaceful and more connected. And that is more of a sustainable dynamic. And really that word sustainability, that's so important to me, because I work with clients who've got 3-year-olds and clients who've got 13-year-olds.
Yes.
It's got to work the whole way through, because if
Yeah.
it doesn't, then it's useless.
Yeah. So we started with the word trust because you said that
Yeah.
you had gone yourself to a parenting coach because actually you didn't really trust yourself.
No.
So tell me how these 3 pillars build that trust. Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, the thing about trusting yourself, I think a big part of this is acceptance. And it's acceptance of what is, and not leaning into the fear narratives. And the thing with acceptance is accepting that you are flawed, and to be flawed is to be deeply human. This is another thing. It's just being more connected with our humanity, that we're not going to do everything perfectly, and really thinking about, well, how could I make a 20% change in my family?
Yeah.
And trust that if I make a 20% change for the better, that incrementally over time, that 20% change will add up to being huge gains across the child's lifetime. And it's accepting that we are going to muck up as parents, and taking some of the high stakes out of that. We just are going to muck up as parents, but trusting...
It's going to be messy either way, right?
It is hugely messy.
Yeah.
But trusting that if we have a solid base of connection with our child, and if we're aligned to our values, and a word I really love is like integrity. If we are able to know and feel what it's like to be like in integrity, then when we muck up, we will always be able to return to the path that feels good. And I think that for me is trust. It's not about getting everything perfectly. It's trusting that you will muck up, but the path is forged and you will return to the path.
Yes. Lovely. Tell me, not least because of your background as a media and film studies teacher, tell me how much you see the tech, the social media, the games, all of that. How much do you see that in your work, or maybe also in your own life? I don't know.
Yeah. So I think that this is the reason why people come to see me. And often what is at the core of struggles around screen time is often the parents' beliefs. Because if a parent believes things like, oh, we're too far gone, we've made our bed, we can't make a change, it's too late, then those parents, unless they address those beliefs, they will not be able to change their screen time. And it's not about the kid, it's about the parent's belief. And it's also about the parent's ability to, or the parent's trust, to trust that their child, if they are making changes in their screen time boundaries, may suffer for a small amount of time until a new routine that better aligns with the parent's values is established. So it basically kind of starts off like this. The parent says, we have a problem. The problem is that the amount of screen time that we have in family is not aligning with our values. And that's a problem. And then you might kind of go into, we would like to reclaim some of this time from screens in order to better align with our values. And then as parents, we are in charge of what the boundaries are because we are the leaders in our family. But getting input from the child, even if it's just symbolic input, right? The parent is very much still in charge, but getting the child, asking, how do you think we can solve this problem? That's a much better way. And if I just share an example of a family I was working with,
Please.
This is a really good example, because there can sometimes be this assumption that as children get older, their screen time will increase. And I would urge every parent to consider, well, is that optimal? It might be normal. It might be the case that other families are doing that. But would that serve you and your family? And actually, it can be quite a curious question to ask yourself is, well, perhaps as my children get older and become more capable, perhaps screen time should decrease. Because perhaps children are better able to follow their interests.
Yeah. And would you suggest allowing for, in that collaborative process, for children to actually also comment on parents' use of screens? I mean, to my embarrassment, how many times do my children come and find me in bed on my phone? It's like, well, what am I teaching here?
Yeah. And I think that is a great, if you're brave enough to do that, I think that's wonderful. Because then you're creating like a whole family accountability. And, the research on habit change tells us that accountability is a really important part of habit change. And ultimately, another thing is, a really important thing that we can offer our children is what we model.
Yeah. Okay, so if people were to come to you, how would that, I think you mentioned it was a 12-week program generally, how would it play out? Is it an online situation? Do they come to you in person? Do they keep a diary? How do you work?
Yeah, so typically my main program is a 12-week program where there's a course. And I used to be a teacher, so I get to the point very quickly. Yes. There's a course element to it, and going through lots of different aspects. Online course, about the nervous system, about emotional intelligence, things like non-violent communication, peaceful boundary setting, all of the juicy stuff that parents want, and also mutual joy, how to get more of that in family life. And, there's elements on screen usage and stuff like that in there as well. And then I do 12 coaching sessions. And really coaching is, so you use the word like optimize. Coaching is an opportunity to optimize your life, but to also, rise up into that leader that you want to be. So it's a mix of strategy. But as I said, the strategy is worthless unless the personal growth. Yeah. So it's a mix of both of those things. Getting really interested in what is in the way of you being an empowered leader for your family. Yeah.
Emily, that is a great note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing what you do and your thoughts about parenting with us. It's been fascinating. I really appreciate you joining me on the podcast.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.